Hello everyone, my name is Brennan Marth. That noise you hearing is my ventilator. And welcome to Page Turners They Were Not, my Star Wars podcast. Today we're going to talk about that slimy piece of Worm-Ridden Filth himself, Jabba the Hutt. In continuing our catalog of the major Star Wars characters, we come to this figure. Jabba was mentioned in the original films, in A New Hope and The Empire Strikes Back. But originally we did not see him until Returning the Jedi. And he definitely lived up to the hype. So let us begin. We're going to be covering just Jabba in the movies, not in the Clone Wars animated series. Though I will mention that briefly when we get there. We first see Jabba the Hutt 32 years before the original film, during the events of the Phantom Menace. Jabba is the officiator of the Bunta Eve pod race, which coincidentally happened to be at the time when our heroes needed it most. So either coincidence or the Force, who knows. Anakin Skywalker, the only human who was a successful pod racer, at least on Tatooine, was agreed to enter the race to help win the money, to help out Qui-Gon and party, so that they could leave Tatooine and go to Coruscant. Shmi Skywalker, Anakin's mom, initially resisted. But when her son said that the problem in the universe was that nobody helped each other, Shmi was persuaded to let Anakin participate in the pod race. Now, of course, the pod races were dangerous, and a lot of bad stuff happened during the pod race. A lot of violence. So Jabba welcomed everyone to the race, and started the race by spitting the head of a frog onto a gong. Actually a gong, yeah. Kind of a strange way to start the race, but hey. And as we saw later in the race, Jabba was getting a little bit bored. And at the very end of the race, Jabba had fallen asleep. So I guess he wasn't too interested in what was going on. That was our first appearance of Jabba the Hutt chronologically. About 22 years later, so 10 years before the original film, Tobias Beckett told Han Solo that he was planning on going to Tatooine, joining with Jabba, who's putting together a crew, and Tobias claimed that this, whatever the gig was, would be his final score so he could retire and go back to his home planet of Gliansum and learn to play the Valacord, as he said. Now, unfortunately, Beckett double-crossed Han, stole the coaxium that they had acquired, and they basically kidnapped Chewbacca. Han went to rescue his friend and had to kill Beckett, who was about to draw his blaster on Han. It was then Han's idea for him and Chewie, once they had won the Millennium Falcon from Lando, to go to Tatooine to enlist in the service of Jabba the Hutt. Now, obviously, we know where this went. 10 years later, around that time, Han Solo had to dump his cargo, which he was carrying, for Jabba when an Imperial cruiser showed up. Jabba was infuriated and wanted to be paid back for his losses. Now he sent Greedo to confront Han Solo to get the money, and we know how that turned out. But I suspect that Jabba didn't care much for Greedo, that's my guess, and sent him because he knew Han was going to kill him. Basically as a way to get Greedo out of his hair. I think that that's highly likely. Now, of course, in the most recent versions of the films, Han, after his encounter with Jabba, or rather his encounter with Greedo, meets Jabba in the hangar bay. Jabba basically reiterates everything Greedo had said about wanting to be paid back, and he couldn't make exceptions. But the smooth-talking Han Solo was able to reassure Jabba that he would pay him back for his losses, plus a little extra, believing that the new job that he'd been given, which is to take Luke and Obi-Wan and the droids to Alderaan, would give him enough money to pay back Jabba the Hutt. Of course, Han did receive the reward money that he had been promised. We don't know, actually, if Han was given the money that Obi-Wan promised, 70,000. But he probably made more than that due to the money he received for rescuing Princess Leia. Now, of course, Han left, but returned to save the day. Luke destroyed the Death Star, and our heroes were rewarded for their efforts. Now, we don't know what happened. Obviously, Han did not use the money to pay back Jabba the Hutt, because 3 years later, during the events of The Empire Strikes Back, Han was still concerned about paying off Jabba the Hutt. And he was planning on leaving Echo Base to go and pay back Jabba the Hutt when the Empire attacked Han. Now, eventually, of course, Han was captured by Darth Vader, and of course, had been tracked by Boba Fett. Han was frozen in carbonite and given over to Boba Fett. Boba Fett then took Han to Jabba's palace, where Han was basically mounted as a trophy on the wall in a state of carbon-freeze agony. Now, whether or not he was in pain, it doesn't look like it, but the expression on his face was quite haunting. Our heroes, of course, mounted a rescue, thawed out Han, and after some, a very convoluted plan, by the way, they all left Tatooine after defeating Jabba the Hutt. Now, let's go back, because I've got a little sidetracked here, to Jabba the Hutt as we see him in Return of the Jedi. We first meet Jabba when R2-D2 and C-3PO enter Jabba's throne room to present a holographic message from Luke Skywalker. The droids are then given over to the ownership of Jabba, C-3PO is enlisted as Jabba's translator, and R2-D2 has to serve drinks on Jabba's sail barge. Luke, of course, then arrives to confront Jabba. Now, Jabba had already demonstrated with the Twi'lek dancer Ula what happened to people who displeased him. In a rather crazy attempt, Luke used the Force to grab a blaster from one of Jabba's guards. Jabba, of course, hit the switch for his trapdoor, which he had demonstrated earlier, and Luke fell into the Rancor pit. Luke, of course, defeated the Rancor, which absolutely infuriated Jabba the Hutt, and, of course, made the Rancor's keeper cry. Jabba then ordered that Han and Luke were going to be thrown in the pit of Carkoon, where the Sarlacc was living. It was explained by C-3PO that they would basically be slowly digested over 1,000 years. And if you read further about what that entailed, you would find that that is an extremely grisly punishment. Of course, Luke's plan went into motion. R2-D2 launched Luke's new lightsaber to him. After some rather crazy battling, Luke and Leia destroyed Jabba's sail barge after Leia had strangled the old Hutt to death. In a rather gruesome moment, if you think about Star Wars as a kid's film. Jabba, who had enslaved Leia and forced her to wear that ridiculous metal bikini, got his just desserts by being strangled by the very chain with which he was holding the princess hostage. Very ironic. And a very fitting end to a slug who built his empire, his criminal empire, on the slavery of others. Or enslaving others, I should say. Now, that being said, that is the end of Jabba. Jabba fried. He was already dead, had been strangled, and then his corpse was burnt to a crisp when the sail barge exploded. Now let's talk about Jabba's portrayal. Jabba was puppeteered by 7 people, if I'm not mistaken. One of the most remarkable puppets ever conceived. And Jabba is so believable, it's incredible. Kind of makes you wonder that if they did Hutts today, would they, and they were done practically, would they still be as believable as Jabba the Hutt? Jabba was incredibly brought to life with that great booming voice, so very fitting to his physical appearance. Jabba, of course, surrounded himself with a court of strange and sadistic creatures, very much in mafia style. Just bringing Jabba to life was an incredible feat. And they did it extremely well, so kudos to all the designers and puppeteers who brought this great character to life. Now, I obviously prefer the original way Jabba appeared, where we did not see a CGI Jabba in A New Hope. Not only is that scene redundant, in terms of the dialogue, it's just reiteration of everything Greedo said. In fact, it is believed that's why the Greedo scene exists, is because Lucas was not able to include the Jabba the Hutt scene that he filmed. The idea was that the Greedo scene was added to fill in what was going to be said in the Jabba scene, which is why the dialogue is very redundant in those two scenes. Also, I think CGI Jabba does not look anywhere as good as puppetry Jabba, and I think they should have left it out. That being said, how do I feel about Jabba the Hutt? I love Jabba the Hutt. There's something about villains that we often find so attractive. Jabba the Hutt is a charismatic character. He's the kind of guy that you'd hope that he would like you. You'd hope that you could hang out in his palace, as long as you don't make him mad. There's that charm that we feel. Kind of an evil charm that comes from Jabba. Jabba is, even though he doesn't speak a word of English, he's so iconic in terms of the way he speaks. More Suda. Like that. And I just love Jabba. I think he's a marvelous character. And I think that even though he appears very briefly, he leaves a huge impact in our minds. And we find ourselves loving this character. And often thinking about him, even though he appears on screen very little. So, Jabba the Hutt is a truly marvelous character. I'm so glad he is included in Star Wars. His world that he inhabits brings an interesting layer to Star Wars. Yes, we love our Jedi. Yes, we love our battles with the Empire and the First Order and the Rebels and the Resistance and the Republic and the Separatists. But there's always going to be a special place in our hearts for the criminal underworld of Star Wars, which I think Jabba the Hutt represents. Let me know what you think about Jabba. My name is Brendan Marr. That noise you hear is my ventilator. I thank you for tuning in to Page Turners They Were Not, my Star Wars podcast. May the Force be with you.